Yeah, this is a tough situation. Here's Marty Biron to talk about it. Marty, a lot of the Blues' frustration isn't so much with the comments about Craig Berube, but just they feel like Kyrou hasn't played up to that contract this season. Yeah. So there's kind of more to it than just the comments from the Blues fans. But what did you make of the whole situation on Thursday night in St. Louis?
Well, I was a bit surprised to see Craig Berube being relieved of his duties right there, right? This is a coach that won a Stanley Cup in St. Louis. He's very loved by the players, by the coaching staff, by the organization, by the fans. So I had Craig Berube as an assistant coach when I was with the Philadelphia Flyers, and I loved him spending time in his office, talking to him when we're on the bus, on the plane. So I was very surprised. But obviously, this is a what have you done for me lately type of league. And the Blues were not in a playoff spot, and now they're working their way towards that. And obviously, you can see that the energy that the Blues played with against the Ottawa Senators, right from the get-go, they were dominating the shots 11-0 in the first period when they scored the first goal to make it 1-0. So to me, it was needed for the Blues players to be feeling responsible a little bit and compete. So unfortunately for Craig Berube, who was rumored to maybe be on the way out last summer, it just took a few more months.
But what about Kyrou? Like, do you think that was fair to him, Marty? I mean, that's a tough situation for a young player.
Fans are passionate. Listen, that's what they do, right? They pay the money to go to the games. And I'm not saying that that's fair. Like, this is not on Jordan Kyrou. He's a part of the future of the St. Louis Blues. And there was some comments being made. When you ask Kyrou about, the change in coach, he says, I have no comment. That's not my coach anymore. Now, there had to have been some friction, because if there's no friction, you say, I love, my coach. I played hard for him. Unfortunately, it's part of the business. And we as player are responsible for what's happened. So the comments were obviously a little sketchy for me. So I can see why the fans would take that personal. And I can see how Kyrou is emotional. I mean, you don't want to cost the living of a person, a family, and, make them change their lives altogether. I never had an in-season coaching change. I never had a coach getting fired in season when I played, but there was a lot of rumors at times, and we would talk about it between the players. And like, we better wake up. Like, we're responsible for this. It's on us. So obviously Jordan Kyrou feels somewhat responsible because he was very emotional in that post-game scrum.
All right, let's talk about something a little more lighthearted, that crazy game in Toronto. I mean, that was wild, right? Columbus up 5-0. Leafs score 5 to come back and send it to overtime. Marty, should we be focusing on the fact that the Leafs were able to come back the way they did, or should we be focusing on the situation in goal for Toronto because it didn't look that great on Thursday night?
If the Leafs had won, I'd say let's focus on that historical comeback, right? We all know the Leafs can score goals, and they can always get back in games. That's why Sheldon Keefe said, I didn't tell him to come back and score 5, but I said, let's get 20 shots and we'll see what happens. That's always, the small battles that you try to do. But I'm going to focus on Ilya Samsonov because at some point at 4-0 or 5-0, I thought, you got to pull your goalie. This is the guy that now is trying to get in the groove with Joseph Woll out of the picture with the injury. You got Martin Jones, who played really well in New York and won a game. So let's give Ilya Samsonov a break, and maybe he comes back into the net on Saturday. But I think what Sheldon Keefe did is, without pulling his goaltender, he basically sent the message to the whole team saying, hey, it's not on Samsonov. Yes, he wasn't great, but it's not on him. It's on everybody else in here that needs to wake up. So I don't want to take the heat off the players by pulling my goalie and almost giving them an excuse saying, well, the goalie wasn't good again tonight, and that's why we pulled the goalie. No, I think this was a move. Listen, I would have pulled Samsonov. I always protect my goaltenders. At least after 2 pairs, I would have said, you're coming out of the game. But this was a move. The coaching staff, number one, said, he's only played 13 games this year. Let's keep him in there, and let's not give that escape to the players. It's on them as well. They responded. Obviously didn't like Samsonov's game, and now the Leafs have got some thinking to do. Is it Martin Jones going forward? Is it somebody else? I think Samsonov has been too inconsistent to rely upon here for the Leafs and what they're doing.
You knew the Edmonton Oilers win streak would have to come to an end eventually. It does on Thursday night after 8 straight wins. But they put up more than 50 shots in this one, Marty. However, they failed to hold on to that third period lead for the first time in like November. What went wrong for Edmonton on Thursday?
Okay, unofficially, it's 57 shots, but by the time that we wake up next morning and the next morning, it could always change up to 48 hours. So, but what went wrong is I think in the second period they're down 2-0, and they decide let's throw everything at the net. Let's just play offense and let's come back in this game, which they did. They were up 3-2, but they never regained their structure. They never came back and said, okay, now we have to play a better game. They just started shooting more pucks in the third, and they finally got to, the high 50s in shots on goal. And then the Tampa Bay Lightning players that you're supposed to check, you're supposed to keep an eye on. Stamkos had 3 goals in the third period, including an empty netter. Nikita Kucherov is saying, hey, McDavid is chasing me now, and McDavid has got, 24 points in the last 9 games. I better do something. So Kucherov gets a goal, and Stuart Skinner, for the first time in 8 starts now in that, in those last 9 games, he's had 8 starts. He was a little shaky in the third, but that's okay. Put that aside. I think if the Oilers played that same game 10 times, they probably win 8 or 9 out of the 10 against the Tampa Bay Lightning. They ended up being a little bit too loose, and they needed a save in the third period. They didn't get it, but they're still dominating, and their power play is on fire. So I'm not too worried about the Oilers after this loss. They did everything they had to do to win the game and tried to push it to 9 games in a row.
Marty, I wonder if you're maybe a little more worried about the Ottawa Senators kicking off that 5-game roadie in St. Louis with a loss. Just 3 wins in their last 9 games. They're last in the Atlantic. Hey, Marty, Brady Tkachuk can only fight so many guys, right? Like to fire this team up. Do you think this team at this point finally needs a new voice behind the bench?
Listen, I mentioned I've never been a part of an in-season coaching, and because we took responsibility as players. And I think the Ottawa Senators are doing the same thing right now. Like Brady Tkachuk took a frustrated penalty in the game. That wasn't a good penalty. Then he gets into a fight. He wants to get his team fired up. Everybody's got to try to generate some energy, some compete, some emotion. But at the start of the game, it was 11-0, the shots on goal, and the Senators were not there at all. They didn't come out of the blocks like they were supposed to. And then defensive zone coverage mishaps, back-checking mishaps. Their power play and the penalty kill is not really performing right now. When you combine the two of them, it's about 89%. You should be at least at 100 or more, combining the two. That's what you try to achieve as a team. So right now, you look at the Blues change their coaching and their head coach, and look at the effort they had against the Ottawa Senators. The Minnesota Wild changed their head coach, and look at how it has turned this team upside down. And now they're really rolling. So I never like to see anybody fired. And I really am a big fan of DJ Smith and his coaching staff and everything they tried to do. But right now, there seemed to be no response from the players. So I'm going to put this on the players. You got to be responsible. You got to step it up. If not, it's going to be a very tough decision for Steve Staios and the organization moving forward.
Marty, before I let you go, do you remember your worst loss in the NHL?
I remember a couple of them, yes. One against the Ottawa Senators, where I actually did not take the loss because I wasn't in net when we gave up the game-winning goal, but we lost 10-4. I believe there was 2 4-goal game. Maybe Alfredson and Avlat maybe had 2 4. They each had 4 goals, and it was in Buffalo, and we got booed off the ice. So that was not good. I played the first, didn't play the second, and played the third. Like, that's how bad it was that I had to go back in the nets.